Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would have a look at the changelog that came out today, and also we would have a look at a post, a kind of dev blog that Gadget made about the graphical improvements that came in the Leviathans update. Unfortunately, the update, as usual, was covered in bugs, which basically meant that couldn't really talk about the positives of it, which kind of sucks, but at the end of the day, at least we can have a look at some of them now. Hopefully, as these technologies also get a little bit more stable, I'll be able to use them a bit more. I tried some of the ray tracing stuff the other day. It worked on some maps, and then on other ones, it was tanking my graphics card hard. So we'll have to see how that goes. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started. So first of all, we have the changelog. This is update 2.47.0.48, and a lot of the changes they talk about here we actually had a look at already in the datamine, but not all of them. Some of them give some more information and also some other stuff. First of all, you have the F2A, F2AA DTW, and then also the SU-34. There was a bug that caused the 20 degree by 12 ACM radar mode to be stabilized relative to the horizon. That's been fixed, which seems a little bit odd. Also, there was a bug that caused the indication of secondary targets, or all targets except the currently selected ones, in TWS radar mode to show up on the screen if the aircraft had a targeting pod installed, and that has been fixed. So overall, once again, some more TWS fixes. There's been a lot of TWS fixes since not this update, but the last update, with the addition of the TWS ESA and also the TWS Plus. There's been a lot of problems with it kind of going forward. You also have for ground vehicles, the CSSA5, the data link, and the LOAL functionality have been added to the FP10 and also the FP10A missiles. So if you were struggling with that vehicle, now at least it should be a little bit better. It still should have a bit of an issue with range and also a few other things, but generally should be better than before. And the fact that this affects both missiles means that the stock grind of the CSSA5 is a little bit better too. I still don't think it should be 12.0. If you compare it to a lot of the other AAs that are around, it seems a little bit odd, but we'll have to see what goes on with it. Obviously, it's one of those kind of multi-role vehicles with the rapid-fire minigun that can destroy MBTs from the side, which is probably why it's at the BR it is. Like, they massively overvalue a lot of these vehicles because of stuff like the Gepard being very strong and also the ITSFA, but many of these other kind of like high-tier ones where targeting speed is way quicker, there is no way that they can get their gun around on time while things just start torching them. There was also a bug with the interface that caused the opening of the menu on the map screen to close the pinned visual weapon selector, so that's been fixed, so now it'll be fully pinned, and also a bug that caused the messages about in-game battle awards to overlap with the bar on team points. That's been fixed too. For locations and missions, they fixed the ground vehicle bots to not move in test drives. That was there since the dev server. I thought it was just kind of a standard thing, but no, looks like it was a bug. And they also fixed a bug that caused distant mountains in some locations to cut off when rotating the camera. So that's been fixed too. So you can see all of the mountains all over the place. Also for the sound, the M36B2 and also the French edition, the engine sound has been replaced with a more appropriate M10 engine sound. They also made an article on the 8th talking about the graphical improvements for the Leviathans update, and one of the big things that they actually talked about was performance. I'm going to read this verbatim because I think this is the most important part of it. It's all nice, like seeing these new technologies and new updated graphics and all of these shiny visuals, but if you literally can't use them, then what the hell is the point? I mean, I actually have a pretty high-end GPU, and even my GPU struggles a lot of the time with a lot of these general technologies to a point where it's kind of bottlenecking pretty hard. So if I'm not able to do it, especially with my rig, it's no chance for anybody else, really. We're always working to make performance better and come up with ways to lessen the load on the CPU and also the GPU for a smoother experience. On the GPU side, we've come up with some ideas on improving performance in the most demanding scenario for ray tracing, such as rendering foliage. Tracing rays through trees and forests is a time-consuming task for the GPU. By changing the method of how rays are checked against leaves and branches, we were able to avoid severe performance degradation in these cases. Driving through a forest or flying close to one while looking at it is much smoother now, and those who have the hardware for it can expect it to be even better soon, as Microsoft announced a technique called opacity micromaps to be part of DirectX. This will be another bigger jump in tracing foliage. Microsoft also announced that shader execution reordering is coming to DirectX, which will help with performance in general. These features are in preview in DirectX, and we're working on utilizing them to make the performance even better. Ray tracing is not only a GPU-intensive workload, but it's also very demanding on the CPU, as we constantly need to update the acceleration structures to keep the ray tracing in sync with the world. On the CPU side, we have identified many bottlenecks that were limiting performance. Ray tracing is using up to 8 CPU cores to do its work, and we have worked a faster processing and better synchronization on those cores. The gains here depend on many factors, CPU type, RAM speed, etc., but every system should see a performance improvement. For me right now, in certain situations, I'm able to run the low ray tracing options at a pretty good setup. It's about 120 FPS, at least on the ground. But then it chunks hard when it comes to aviation. That's the situation I'm in, and to be honest, with how expensive PC parts are right now, don't really want to upgrade the whole rig just to be able to ray trace. I think the game itself looks quite nice, even without the ray tracing. Of course, it would always be nice for it to look better, but at the end of the day, it's something that is going to be a limiting factor for many, including myself. When it comes to image quality, they have also improved it when it came to the global illumination. If you remember the global illumination, this is something that they turned up in 2018 in the Dagor engine. Now they're actually basically improving it. So instead of standard global illumination, you have path-traced global illumination, or PTGI. This is simulating light around the scene and calculates the lighting on surfaces which are indirectly lit. So for example, in shadows, indoors, or valleys. The old global illumination did a great job, but there was limitations, basically the distance that it could go at. With PTGI, you can actually make it so shadows are inside stuff instead of on the external. They've also massively increased the range of where you see these things. It makes the game look absolutely stunning, and just honestly, in certain pictures, straight up just makes it look like real life, which I think is really awesome. But once again, these are static images. These are not ones where, you're actually playing the game. Also, when it comes to playing the game with all of these new technologies, FPS is a big factor. As the game, or as you get more competitive in the game, if you want to go that route, it's obviously very important that FPS is increased. So what they've ended up doing, you can enable frame generation with the GPUs. If you have the right GPU, you can either do it with NVIDIA DLSS frame generation, which is RTX 40 series and above. Then you have AMD FSR frame generation, which is obviously the AMD stuff, and also Intel XeSS frame generation. So basically, the way at least it's been talked to me when it comes to frame generation is basically the kind of graphics card predicts the other kind of frames which are around the place. So you basically have the frame that you actually see, and then you have the ghost frames which are sat next to it, which are supposed to kind of show what's kind of going on. So basically what ends up happening, it means that it is a higher perceived FPS, but it's not actually a higher FPS. So technically, even though it may look a little bit better, it's just faking it until you make it. Now, obviously, you'll see this if you have a higher refresh monitor. For me, I have a 165 Hz one. it doesn't matter if you add in all of these different kind of technologies if you don't have a nice monitor as well. This is another part of the puzzle where if you upgrade one thing, you have to upgrade a bunch of others too, which makes it so expensive. Like, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, it's another part which hopefully will set up. What I've seen is a lot of people run DLSS and also ray tracing at the same time. And for me, it does look really nice, but it also blurs the picture, which I can't be done with because my eyes already don't really work very well. So why would I, make it so I can't see even more? The blurriness I get is really nice and makes it look like kind of a movie, but at the same time, I like FPS and also I like being able to see things. So normally I turn off a lot of these technologies. The other part of it, which is also kind of interesting, is there's actually a handheld that they're using, which is actually running at 70 to 90 FPS with the game, which is kind of nuts when you actually think about it. I wonder if when it comes to War Thunder, it would ever end up on something like Switch 2 or a kind of kit like that. I don't see why not, since, of course, when it comes to War Thunder, they want to get it on as many platforms as possible, as long as the platform provider is reasonable. And obviously, Nintendo hasn't always been reasonable. Let me know what you think, if you're taking advantage of these new graphical improvements. For me, I feel like this right now is aimed at a very small part of the player base, since most people are not going to be anywhere near the level of being able to use this. Maybe next year I'll upgrade my rig so we can start dealing with these things, but for now, definitely not the case. Especially when putting together a new rig at the moment is probably about maybe 3 or 4 grand without even thinking over here. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.